All right, guys, we're back. Southeastern 14. Rory Whetstone joins me. Our weekly Missouri chat. We didn't chat last week because Missouri was off, but heard there's a big game this week, Rory, that probably worth
Oh, just
talking
a
about.
little bit.
Just
Just
a
a
little
little
bit.
bit.
Just a little bit. The Tigers are going to head to Athens to play the 34-game regular season winning streak Georgia Bulldogs, 25-game winning streak overall. Before we get into that, and before you guys watch my video technical issues yet again here on the channel, which has been a running theme this week, let's tell you about our friends at Bet Online. Which, if you're placing your bets on my internet working right this week, please bet the under on number of times that happens. Bet Online, our new sponsor here at Southeastern 14, of course, the last of the major pro sports leagues off and running. NBA's up and going. College basketball gets started next week. And Bet Online still your top spot for all your live betting action and contests. Of course, NFL, college football, UFC, NHL, all in full swing. Bet Online, number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. And you can get all your basketball betting action, as we said a second ago, along with every sport available at your fingertips with the desktop and mobile access anytime you need it. So head on over to Bet Online. Remember, use that promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BLEAV. Write that down somewhere. Put it in your notes. Whatever you got to do, don't forget it. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right. Speaking of game starting, Rory, Missouri at Georgia, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. I mean, I guess where do we even begin, right? I mean, this is, in my opinion, this is the toughest test of the season, which, for Missouri fans, you could easily say that, but I also think for Georgia fans, they could look at this and say, this is the toughest team we played to this point. I think, that goes for both teams here. And so sets up for a pretty fascinating matchup. We've seen other SEC teams go into Georgia and feel pretty good about themselves. Kentucky, was previously unbeaten several weeks ago. They go on to get beat 51-13. So always that possibility, but I do think Missouri is as equipped as anyone maybe to at least make things interesting here against Georgia.
Yeah, I think that Missouri can really give Georgia a run for their money here. I think this game's going to dictate what the SEC standings, East standings shape out to be. I think Brady Cook has shown that he can perform well on the road this season, but he hasn't really played in a game of this magnitude yet. I'm trying to be as confident as I can about this weekend, but I mean, I've still got PTSD from last year, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? And I think if you're gonna lean on something, if you're Missouri and you're trying to find the path here to upsetting Georgia, I mean, one way to be optimistic is to say, well, look what we did last year. And some people will even say that Georgia was a better team last year than they were this year. Not that it matters, but I think some people would say that, although we know Missouri's a better team than they were a year ago. And so I think that at least is something that you can look at here and say, okay, well, that's one thing maybe we have going in our favor. You mentioned Brady Cook, and I think it's another one where his completion percentage is fantastic, about 70%. 20 total touchdowns, only the 3 interceptions, which I know he's thrown those a little more recently. And again, Georgia's defense will be the best he's seen to this point. There's no question about that. They could force multiple mistakes just because of how good they are. But if it's the combination to me of things, if you're going to beat Georgia, and this is going to sound so simple, right? If you're going to beat Georgia, you got to score points. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? You can't beat Georgia with a big goose egg on the scoreboard. Like, you got to have points. And so I think that is why I'm intrigued here, is knowing that Brady Cook's played as well as he plays to this point. I mean, Luther Burden, 5th in the nation in receiving yards now, 905 yards on the season, 96 or more receiving yards in 7 of their 8 games, 61 receptions, 6 touchdowns to go along with that. We've talked about Cody Schrader, I think, in recent weeks and kind of his numbers and what they've become. 807 rushing yards now in the season, 9 touchdowns. Had that huge game against South Carolina, 26 for 159 and 2 touchdowns. Theo Weiss has come along. I'm trying to look at the numbers here.
In there as well.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing, right? And I know there's going to be some people out there saying, well, Kentucky, a lot of people said the same stuff about Kentucky, but the difference is very clear to me. Devin Leary of Kentucky has not been consistent this season. Everybody's picked on the passing game for Kentucky. No one's picked on the passing game for Missouri. And so I think their ability to score the ball, the ability to have that many guys who have made big plays this season, I think they're going to find a path to scoring points here. Now, I'm not saying they're going to score 50, but I think that's what, to me, gives them a little bit of extra something that these other teams that Georgia has seen to this point have not had. And I think a lot of it goes to Brady Cook. So.
No, I completely agree with that. I think they've got a lot of offensive weapons. The combination between Brady Cook and Luther Burden, but I mean, you mentioned it. You've got Cody Schrader as well, Theo Weiss. I think that they'll put a dent in the scoreboard immediately, but it's about whether or not they'll be able to sustain that throughout the entire game. And my other kind of point for them is whether their defense can kind of live up to their hype. I feel like they haven't had their strongest defense of the season yet. I think they were great against South Carolina, not allowing a touchdown. I think they had some bright spots against LSU. I mean, if you look at the score, you might not think that, but I mean, it's Jaden Daniels. He's an incredible player. But I think if Missouri's defense can show up and have another great game, that it could be a pretty close one in Athens.
Yeah, the LSU score is misleading. I think people, if you weren't watching it, you forget that, because it's like Missouri's up 4 points with 3 minutes left or something. Yeah. And they get LSU gets the pick six with 20 something seconds left. So this was not a 10-point game. This was a game that goes right down to the wire. And again, it's a game, it feels like a huge missed opportunity for Missouri based on the fact they were leading the game, with only a couple minutes left. Talk about the defense. Yeah, I think that's something. I mean, Georgia's offense is rolling these days. They have gotten going. There was a lot of people, criticizing Georgia's offense early in the season. Are they ever going to figure it out? Got off to a bit of a slow start. And that's something that Georgia does kind of regularly. Maybe not every game, but certainly not against Kentucky several weeks ago. And not against Florida. Florida scored on the opening possession, and Georgia took off from there. But Georgia this season has not gotten off to a great start in terms of just putting up a ton of points. And so that's where, I don't want to say do the same thing as Florida did last week, because Florida came out, scored on the opening possession. You're like, uh-oh, Florida's got a chance, and then Florida just gets blown out. Yeah. And so, Missouri, it's going to take a good start, but I think defensively, like you said, going up against this offense that's now, I think, got a lot of guys back in the mix, except for Brock Bowers, of course, and everybody, thinking Georgia's going to fall apart without Brock Bowers. Don't get me wrong. He's a great, fantastic player, but I think it's pretty clear that Georgia got enough talent to do enough without that. And I mean, I'm looking at Beck's numbers here, 315 or more yards passing in 4 of the last 5 games. Completions percentage now sits at 73% on the season. That's 7th in college football. Missouri's defense allowing 226.4 yards per game through the air. That's 64. So, about in the middle of the range there. But another interesting kind of stat here, opposing quarterbacks completing 61.6% of their throws. That's 88th nationally. And so, yeah, I think that there's that for the defense. I mean, to me, yes, we can talk about the Missouri offense scoring points and all that, but the defense is going to have to be really good, because this is not just playing Georgia. This is playing Georgia at home in a game, in a game too, where let's add this to the mix. Game where Georgia may have a little chip on its shoulder after being ranked number 2 in the college football playoff. As a team who's won 34 straight regular season games to 25 games in a row. So
there's a bit of that. I think Dominic Lovett's going to want to prove that he made the right choice in that transfer as well. So, yeah, their defense is really going to have to show up this week. But I think it's good for Missouri that they're coming off that bye week. I mean, Cody Schrader's been dealing with an injury in all of the games this season, it seems like, and he's still performed well. But after this bye week, he's going to have a lot of rest, and you should hopefully have Ennis Rakestraw back this week as well.
Yeah, so I think both teams feeling like they're getting healthy at the right time. And again, setting up for such a huge game here, because, we've kind of, and one other thing before I forget, we didn't mention this a minute ago, but I think the other formula for success to beating Georgia is you don't want to give Georgia anything easy. And guess what? Missouri is a team that does not turn the ball over. 8th in the country this season in terms of only 6 turnovers on the year. So not giving up those opportunities. Now, like we said, those are against teams not named Georgia. So this is different in going on the road to play Georgia. It's not easy to go into Georgia and just have a complete clean sheet where you don't have some of those just plays that just make you scratch your head. You're like, there's the play that just turned the game. We're like, we're in trouble. And so But I mean, all we can do is go on what we've seen to this point. And again, Missouri's been great in that area. They've not allowed those kind of game-changing plays on the other side with a stupid turnover here or something like that. And so I think that is big too, going into this kind of game and knowing the atmosphere you're going to be playing in. The only thing I'll say about that is at least it's not a night game. Because that didn't turn out well for Kentucky. But so yeah, like there's a lot of things that, and this is the way I put it, like all week, is we can sit here and find all these things about Missouri that, and I've said it, we talked about this in recent weeks, where it's like, I still don't think Missouri is getting enough credit. Like, they're sitting here at 7-1. I still think people think this is a complete fluke. And I'm like, I feel like we should have got past that weeks ago, just based on what they've done. The win at Kentucky, South Carolina, team completely struggling, could have came in and, been like, hey, our season's on the line. We're desperate. We're going to go in here and prove that Missouri's not as good as people think they are. Missouri takes care of business there, took care of business at Vanderbilt, all those different things. The LSU game, again, they still controlled that game for a good chunk of the matchup against LSU. And so I don't know why that people aren't kind of still giving Missouri the benefit of the doubt. And so we can find all those things to say, hey, people aren't giving them enough credit. But at the same time, Georgia's still Georgia, and they could come out and just, dominate this game, because that is how good Georgia is. And people can say, well, it's not, again, like we said earlier, not the team they were last year, all these other things. Doesn't matter. It's still Georgia, and we've seen them in this kind of spot just, break teams apart. Like, they just completely go in, do their thing, and that's what happens. But I don't know. Like, this is one where I keep saying it. I'm like, I want to lean on the side of saying Missouri. I can't go as far as saying Missouri's going to win the game. I'm not comfortable doing that. But I do think Missouri is a team, with the way they are built, they have a lot of things. Georgia doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, but Missouri has a lot of things where they can at least match what Georgia does in a lot of areas. And I don't know. I give them a shot here to at least make this a game in the fourth quarter, which is all you can ask for when you're playing a team on the road that's a two-time defending national champion.
I mean, I think it'll be a close game. I mean, as you said, both teams are very different this year than they were last year. It's a whole new ball game. But I think, Mizzou's motto all year has been that they've got something to prove. And I think they're going to go to Athens and compete with Georgia.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting because I see a lot of strong – it's SEC football. A lot of strong opinions on both sides here.
The last time Mizzou went to Athens and won was in 2013 when they won the SEC East. And I made this mini connection. But the Cy Young Award winner in 2013 was Max Scherzer. Now, who just won the World Series last night and is a Mizzou grad? Well, I don't know. Just little things.
All right. So everyone needs to write that down, because if this thing winds –
just that.
If this happens, like, it's all Rory. Like, she's come up with this connection. I would have never made that connection. So if it happens, that's you. And people are going to remember that, and we're going to talk about it next week. But yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a close game, and I always hesitate to say that because, it's the internet. We're recording this on a YouTube channel, and there'll be plenty of people who can go back and say, remember what you said? It was not. But again, I'm going to lean on that for now. I'm going to say that, with always having the kind of caveat that Georgia can always be Georgia at any moment and blow out anybody. But I think Missouri is the toughest team they played to this point. And of course, this is still the toughest team Missouri's played to this point. But I think Burden, the offense, everything that's there, they can at least score some points, even against a defense that's just ridiculous. But it's a better setup that I think than most teams have had to this point. And so that's all you can go on. You have to go with that. So
yeah. No, I'd like to be optimistic and say that they could walk out of Athens with the win. I don't think I could say that quite yet. Don't want to get my hopes up too high and have something like last year unfold, but I think they'll be able to make it a really close game.
Yeah, Missouri, depending on where you look, 15.5 to 16, I think, point underdog at this point. And that's a lot. That's a lot of points. But again, some people were saying the same thing about, games against Kentucky and Florida as well. And Georgia won both those games convincingly. So we will see what happens. But Rory, always enjoy the conversation. Of course, Rory will be with us here doing, like we said, weekly videos on the channel. She's also helping us out with some other stuff, social media and such as well. So fun to have all that going, which, again, we haven't really mentioned this a lot on our YouTube channel, but we are on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all those places now. So we will start putting the links to all those in the description below. So if you want to follow us on any of those platforms, you can see Rory's fine handiwork on those as well. Yes, we will have some exclusive stuff that you won't be able to find on YouTube podcast feeds also. So you definitely want to follow us Instagram, TikTok for all that stuff. But anything else, Rory? I know maybe you mentioned the weekly show you're doing on Thursdays and a lot of other stuff as well there.
Yeah, Thursdays at 3 p.m. on KCOU. You can go to kcou.fm, I believe, and 88.1 FM if you're near the Columbia, Missouri area. Just me and Billy Jones kind of running through all SEC sports.
Yep, check it out there. And I'm just going to let you guys know, if you're listening to this at this point, and you've listened to this entire thing, there is a chance that we release this on YouTube as audio only, depending on how great my video is once I go back and watch this in the editing process. So just so you know, if you're like, wait a second, this is Southeastern 14, what are they doing with just audio on this particular episode? Well, just know that, hey, we're going to try to get you the best that we can video-wise, but if it's not good enough, we will just release this with audio with a nice little photo, and you guys can just listen to us as well. So that is always an option. So, all right, Rory, appreciate it as always, and we appreciate you guys watching and or listening here at Southeastern 14. But again, be sure to check out all the stuff we got on the channel, get you ready, all of our predictions, previews for Missouri, Georgia coming up this weekend, all the other games as well. SEC basketball stuff has started. We did our preseason power rankings there, and so check it out. We'll say once again, Missouri fans, I apologize. I did not have you ranked where they wound up being ranked in our staff rankings. I had you higher, just so you're all aware. Don't blame it on me. But Dennis Gates, Coach of the Year. But check it all out here on the channel. And again, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. And we will talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online.